Okay, so time to repot the old girl now. It has been a while. It's pretty firm in here. A little bit of compression, but not much. It's pretty hard. And this is an old mica pot as well, and it has an incurved rim, which is making it a little bit more difficult. So all you can do is start to either just chip away at the edge to get all that out and dig your channel around there, or you can use the old scythe or old cook blade, some sort of knife or something, and just sort of cut through there as well. You can do a bit of that. Or on this one, it's a mica pot. I know I've got to get rid of a lot of that root, and as you get older you work smarter, not harder. So I know I've only got a blade here that's not going to go as deep as the pot. It's also a mica pot, so I'm not concerned about breaking it. Much quicker. That was better. A little noisy, but you know. And tie-wise, we've still got a little bit to go towards the bottom, I think. So I don't want to touch this bar, so I'll just see if that's going to lever out a little bit using these gins at the front here. And nice and simple. Save a little bit of elbow grease, and now to the task of simply chipping away at all this. I want to get rid of all of this old surface soil in here. It's all very old. Clean out a little bit of this old moss through there, but some of this can stay a little. But mostly get rid of all this old surface soil here and tease away the root ball. Make it smaller, reduce it down, and see what pot we can get it into from there. So for that one, we just use the old hook. You can use any sort of pick or hook. Close to the trunk I'll use the stick, but the steel hook is okay through these sort of roots here. I don't want to sort of tear and rake through them. I'm going to just do a sort of small chipping action. I do like to only use the single hook. I think 2 or 3 prong forks that they use. Too much risk of actually breaking roots in the process of that. This one I can just simply just do a small chipping little action like that without actually tearing and pulling through there, and just slowly loosen that soil up. Just breaks it away, and then after that I can use a bit more of the sort of combing action, if you like, rather than ripping and tearing, and pull those roots away so that they're all on a nice loose open stage like this, so that I can get the new soil in amongst there. So we've got the root ball all worked out nice now. You'll see that I've left the roots fairly long through this layer here. It's because where I want all the feeding to happen. This has also been raised up a little bit higher in the pot previously, so I want these roots in this upper layer here of the root ball, not the ones down here, to be enclosed in soil, so that I'll raise the height up a bit. Then I can get some more strong growth out of these over the next couple of years, so that eventually I can cut more off the bottom and lift this root ball up a little bit so that I can get it into a shallower pot. I've had a look at a couple of pots and I've over-potted a little bit. I do have one I've selected. This one looks a bit heavy, especially in front of the tree. It's deep enough at the moment so that I can sit that root ball down so that I can achieve those results as I want from these upper roots here. So I've worked it to be nice and flat there, You'll notice in the video that I did use the saw to cut the bottom off here. So then it was definitely coming in with the hook afterwards still to loosen all that up. And also I showed you showing this in there, I hope is visible, because I've sawn it, and also around the edge, everything should be recut with scissors, because when you cut with the saw, obviously it's a fairly rough and frayed cut to end to the roots. That's not so good. Yeah, we want a nice clean cut so that it can reshoot a fresh tip and continue to grow good. So all of these roots underneath the root ball here, they're kept very, very short, and I keep that nice and flat so that I can sit it nice and stable in the pot. Looks pretty good under there. And then around here, I've left them long because I had a choice of a couple of pots, one with a bit more surface area but not quite deep enough. So I can come through now and I can just trim all these off. They'll be pretty much the same length. Anything that's heavy or too long in there, I can deal with that separately. And ones like this that come from here and cross over, we don't need that. We want it to come back to the root ball. It's pretty important for me when potting up juniper, especially if I'm going to a larger pot of surface area, to leave these roots long enough so they touch the edge of the pot. Juniper does not like to be in wet soil, so we use a drier mix for juniper. Yes, I do use some organics, but I want a drier mix for conifers because they're used to growing in a dry zone area. But, as a result of that, I don't want to put this into a pot that is so much bigger than the root ball that there is this space around here without roots in it. I want the roots to touch the edge of the pot so that they can fill it and drink right from the edge of the pot and dry that soil out nice and uniformly across the whole thing. Otherwise the outer layer can stay too wet and the roots are not going to want to penetrate into that at all. They'll stay growing in amongst themselves here. It's an important point to remember. So we've got the pot prepped up, we've got some tie wires in there, all the holes covered, a bit of soil in the bottom, a little bit of extra soil on this right side because I do want to kick it over and the soil was fairly flat, the root ball was fairly flat underneath. Bring the tree in, the roots trimmed up to be the size of the pot, you see, same so the roots are to the edge. Set that down. Now that's still a little bit high on that side there, I'm not quite so happy with that, so I'll take a little bit of soil out underneath. The biggest problem people make is too much soil under the tree. You can take out that much there, no problem. Because all I need under the soil ball, under the root ball, is this much. I only need a few millimeters of soil underneath the root ball itself. If you put too much underneath, your trees will sit too high, they'll sit on a mound. The water will not penetrate evenly because the water runs down the hill to the flat ground, yes? So if your tree is too mounded up in there, water won't penetrate the inside and some of those fine feeder roots around the base of the tree can die. So I can bring this right back to be just a bare covering of soil on this side and just a little bit more on that side. You can take a bit more of that out. And that's fine, just this much underneath. All of the root growth is going to come to the side, yeah? Not underneath it. So the trick here, as I said, I don't want to touch this bark. Don't want to touch this bark, it's beautiful and old. People talk about polishing the barks on juniper. You would never do it in this situation because you would only normally do that. It's quite distracting when people also say that the Japanese do it. Well, some of them do, some of them don't. But it's only ever really done when the deadwood is the feature. There is so much deadwood and just the live vein to get the contrast. When it's the trunk of the tree, you don't want to polish that bark off the trunk of the tree at all. This is just a little bit of deadwood in amongst this beautiful bark. This is age. This is not that old a tree by world standards in bonsai, but it is for us. So I would want all of this to show as much age as possible and have you believe it's more like 150 instead of 145. So I want to make sure it's in position fairly correctly. It's nicely over. Give it a nice little rub down onto the soil so that it pads in beautifully underneath. And then we want to tie these over the root ball. So because this tree is a little bit on the top heavy side, I definitely want to secure this in very nicely. Make sure the wind doesn't come through the garden and knock it off, knock it out of the pot. So I'll do the full 4-way tie on this one for sure. So I pull the wire into the root ball and I make sure none of those roots are pushed underneath it. I want to move those so the wire comes between it and doesn't pull any of those against the soil ball itself. Pull that over to this side. The shorter wire is a long wire there, short wire here. Pull up on the wire, pull the tension back this way, fingers either side, and bring that down firm onto the root ball without being too tight. Bring that over, once again making sure I'm not pinning any roots against the root ball. Having the short one onto the long one now. Tension up. That's actually pulling that other wire in nice and tight by doing that as well. Keep your wire low so you can't see it when it's finished. When you come back to this corner, of course, I only have one tie left. So I just use another piece on the other side, hook that in, hook it back over or under the wire that I tied the first time from this corner to that corner. Slide that back down low. That off there, and now I've got something to tie this one to when I come around the root ball there. Now I want to pull nice tension on this one, pulling it back away from there. My fingers go either side and slide in as I pull down. By pulling this now, I'm putting the tension back on all three of those wires that I've put on already there. See that is very stable in that pot, so nothing can move. You can see there, no movement whatsoever. Soil tide. So many discussions on potting media, substrate, whatever you want to call it for bonsai. So many discussions on it. It needs certain qualities, definitely. Two schools are definitely just organic or non-organic, inorganic. I've always been a believer of organics, in through from my father's education to me. Whilst this is sort of more of a mountain variety, trees grow in the earth and they grow in a combination of rock and organic matter, and they actually get their nutrients, most of them, from the organic material that might be within there. So I'm a believer in putting it in here as well. A conversation for another time perhaps. Yeah. So now at this stage, people that do this just with their fingers, I'm sorry, I don't say people are doing things wrong very often, but if you're doing it just with your fingers, it's not correct. It's not good enough. You need the potting stick. You can use one or two. It needs to be timber or bamboo so that it has that little bit of friction. And for me, it's a combination of stick and finger, so that the stick makes the agitation and the finger just simply follows down, so the soil makes sure that it falls into that hole. So to start with, I'm just doing half filling this pot and making sure that all of that soil settles down the bottom half first, so that I can get around that edge of the soil ball and everything in there. And I also want to make sure I can try and lift up some of those upper roots that I was talking about before, so that they can fill a separate layer, so they can not be down with the lower roots, that they can be up here like this. I live in an industrial area, so there's lots of trucks around. close to Archerfield Airport, so there's lots of planes around. And I'm also close to Queensland Rail Freight Yard, so there's lots of trains around. So I'm in the ultimate planes, trains and automobiles location. But it can get a bit noisy. Bonsai is my piece. So you see I'm making sure I agitate that soil all the way down to the bottom, and my finger is not working with pressure, it's working more just with gravity or a little bit of force, but not much, because I don't want to pack the soil down, just settle it down in amongst those roots. The stick can get between the roots a whole lot better than my finger can. So I'm doing that until I can feel the soil is a little bit of pressure in there. When the stick first goes in, it slips right through the bottom and hits the bottom of the pot. But as it starts to settle, you feel a little bit more resistance against the stick, and I don't ever want to have to force the stick in, it just goes in as far as it needs to at that first bit. And give a bit of a bash to that as it comes around just to help settle. You can still see the tree is extremely stable in there, it's not moving anywhere. So now I'm just going to go around and lift up some of those upper roots. Not too many, but there's enough just to lift up and put on top of that layer of soil that I've put in, so that they can get stronger. And as I said, in time, hopefully they'll be stronger than the bottom ones and fill up this upper layer with fibrous root, so that I can reduce the height of the root ball. Just sit this a little flatter. Yeah, it was too mounded before, even in that micropot. You can see now it's nice and flat with the base of the rim of the pot. Sorry. So now I can come in and fill it up. So there's a lot of soil in this thing. It's going to stay pretty wet for a while. I need to make sure that this tree dries out in between watering. This mix is only about 25% organic. It does look a bit more, but it's a bit darker. There's a bit of moisture in it. And it's a combination then of mostly scoria and zeolite. A little bit of potash in there as well. So now I just want to go through and just settle that upper layer just roughly. Not too impacted, as I said. Letting air still flow in there as much as water. And combination, as I said, stick and finger. Stick just shakes at the back, the tip doesn't move, and the finger follows it down the hole. You can take a long time to do this sometimes, yeah? And you should. This is where the ultimate respect for the tree comes, when we start cutting its roots off now. This is the one thing that a lot of things don't do in nature, or any other horticultural practice, in fact. We're the only one really that touches the roots like this. We need to get it right, because it's supply and demand. If we get it wrong down here, it's wrong up here. So I'm pretty happy with how that's come in there now. Just another little bash around as it comes to help settle. And I'll just pack the top surface down a little bit. Smooth that in. Get rid of any of the chunks that are there. And you see that's perfectly flat there, no mound. No mound for the roots whatsoever. Nice and simple and straightforward. The soil can penetrate, the water can penetrate, all over. Now it gets a thorough water from the top. I'll water over the foliage as well. And I'll soak it, absolutely soak it from the hose down through so that it pours out. If there's any sort of silty, dusty water, dirty water come out, water it until that all stops and it runs clean. That just washes any of that excess dusty stuff away if there happens to be any. Although I do prepare my products, there shouldn't be any. But always make sure if it is dirty that you wash until the water runs through clean. And wash till it's absolutely pouring through, not just your normal daily water 3 times the amount at this time. It's absolute saturation. I'm pretty happy with how that's going now. It's going to sit back on the shelf, recover, and there'll be some styling work on this one in the future. Thanks very much.